In the interest of time, I'm going to there's not that many questions. I'm going to move on to the second half of this session. So it's democratic citizenship theme. And that's going to be taken up first by Carlos Torres, who is an extremely well-known, very famous, world-renowned educational sociologist. I particularly associate him for his work in thinking critically and carefully about the legacy of Paulo Freire, and he set up the Paulo Freire Institute, amongst other things. He's late of UCLA. He seems to be a busy man across the world, judging by what I learned about him over the past couple of days. And he is a world-renowned expert on global citizenship. So we're going to give the floor over to Carlos. Thank you very much. Do you want to share slides? You're muted, Carlos. You've 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Fergal, for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. Greetings from the mountains of Topanga at 5 a.m. in the morning. And I title my presentation, Education in the Neoliberal Landscape, which is part of the conversation today. And I see global citizenship as an alternative. The goal of this presentation is to identify some of the critical elements of what we want to do with global citizenship education. I assume that the rest of the people are looking at the PowerPoint that I sent yesterday. It's usually in 15 minutes you cannot say much, but I will make one claim around which I would like to locate the whole argument. The key claim in this keynote is that global citizenship education contributes to global peace. There are many problems I have written extensively of what problems affect global peace. The first one is inequality. It is very clear that since the end of the Second World War and the beginning of the 1950s onwards, the world has become increasingly unequal. Now we can talk about the have and have-nots that have created distinctions, serious distinctions in terms of what we can do, and particularly because in capitalism, people tend to justify what they do according to what they can consume. And that is one of the great dilemmas that we have now talking about citizenship, when citizenship is now being looked in terms of consumers. The second element, very clear for many people, well defined by Alexis and some others in the presentation, is poverty. We are more than 7 billion people on this earth at the moment, and more than 1 billion lives with less than $1 a day. It is true that you cannot compare things in terms of standards of living, but it is also true that even in the less populated countries, the less rich countries, etc., you have much more income than just $1 a day. The third element, which I will emphasize and don't have the time to discuss, is neoliberal globalization, which currently has been confronted by neo-populist authoritarian governments like Trump, that just lost elections in the US, and we are celebrating that. A fourth element that I would like to emphasize, following the tradition of Paulo Freire, is banking education. That is authoritarian education in which the teacher takes absolute control and does not respect the morality, the knowledge, the experience of the student. And finally, last but not least, predatory cultures that are destroying the planet. So why global citizenship education? I can go back to 2012 with Mr. Ban Ki-moon creating the first statement from the UN about education, defining 3 elements. One was education for all, access. Second, quality of education. And then added as the linchpin of this process, global citizenship education, and UNESCO was responsible for pursuing this goal. Theoretically, I see global citizenship as an intervention in search of a theory. Global citizenship education is a form of intervention looking for an agency of implementation. We know that the world is becoming more and more interdependent and diverse, connected with the developments around globalization. We also know that there is a deterritorialization of citizenship practices and identities. In other terms, we have more than 200 million people migrating outside the borders of the country where they were born, and therefore many more millions migrated inside the countries, and that affects dramatically the concept of citizenship. What kind of citizenship we will propose? I have been working on this topic for 2 decades, and I will say a global, democratic, multicultural citizenship. I think these elements of citizenship help to promote global peace and sustainable development. Understand that one of the curious trademarks of globalization that is now pretty much attacked by several groups from the left and from the right is that cultural diversity. What globalization has shown to us that the world is highly diverse. So this idea of a global democratic multicultural citizenship should be the center point of what we do in promoting citizenship in our different areas. And there is a dialectic of the global and the local. Therefore, the global and the local should be commensurated in terms of how you can apply different strategies to promote global citizenship at both levels. It is very clear that what we are experimenting now with COVID-19 is a good example of how localization taken in the wrong way, that is defending the borders of a particular country, has affected the possibility of a collaboration through solidarity, and that is making more and more difficult to really survive this pandemic, which is, at least in my lifetime, and probably the lifetime of many of the generations that are here in this conversation, affecting our life in ways that we cannot even predict yet. So I will say that the only problem that we may find in discussing global citizenship is that some people may think that it's an imposition over national citizenship. My argument will be that the expansion of a universalistic claim of global solidarity rests on the concept of cosmopolitan citizenship nested in a model of cosmopolitan democracies. But at the same time, global citizenship should add value to national, regional, even community citizenship. And I think it's central for this concept. Let me offer 2 elements that I consider central for creating any form of citizenship, more so global citizenship. The first one is what I will call civic minimums. Therefore, that is, all citizens should have participate with a basic help from the state and civil society in terms of material basis. In other terms, how can we expect that people who cannot provide for places to sleep, homeless, people who don't have enough resources to feed their family, that's hunger, people who have no jobs, unemployment, people who feel themselves badly treated by other races, etc., racism, all of those elements conspire against the possibility of constructing citizenship. So T.S. Marshall, T.S. Marshall said that exactly more than 60 years ago, and I think we are still at that question, central question: do we have civil minimums to provide for citizenship. The second concept is civic virtues. We need to get a concept in which people really foster general virtues like courage, law-abidingness, loyalty, social virtues, autonomy, open-mindedness, economic virtues, work ethic, capacity to delay self-gratification, political virtues, the critical capacity to analyze, the capacity to criticize. So let me conclude with an argument around what I consider the central elements of global citizenship. What we have now is a call to arms. What we have now is a call to defend the global commons. Traditionally, we have thought of the global commons, those areas of the world that cannot be monetized, that they cannot convert into some kind of merchancy, some kind of elements that construct ability to buy and sell, the outer space, the global the global air that surrounds us, and of course the big forests out there. Many people talk about the Amazons as a universal element, and of course the question of how we are going to live in a planet. Well, the basic proposition that I have is that the planet is our only home. We have to protect through a global citizenship education and sustainable development education, moving from diagnosis and denunciation into action and policy implementation. This is the first element that global citizenship education should help to promote: planetarian citizenship. The second element is global commons is predicated on the idea that global peace is an intangible cultural good of humanity with immaterial value. Global peace is a treasure of humanity. And I think that as long as we can preserve peace, we'll preserve citizenship. And finally, that's my last statement, global commons is predicated on the need to find ways that people who are all equal manage to live life together democratically, pursuing their individual and cultural interests and achieving their inalienable right to life, to liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is interesting, when I postulated this several years ago, I asked myself a question: why happiness? And the answer is very simple. We all pursue happiness. And then I began to see the returns of happiness in economics. I began to see the new journals created in science to study happiness. Therefore, with those comments, I thank you for the patience and the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you so much, Alberto Torres, for that very, very stimulating, wide-ranging talk. I now want to move to the mayor of Dangjin. It's Mr. Hong-jang Kim, and he is a presentation. I also want to say we need to be careful with time, because I've been alerted to the fact that the program I have has one other part. It's not marked in my program, but there's another participant who should be in this session. So I'm going to call on him after Mr. Hang. Thank you very much, and I invite you in. Look forward to your discussion.
네, 안녕하십니까?
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Kim Hong-jang, Mayor of Dangjin City of the ROK. I'm glad to see you all from GNSC member cities. Here in Korea is very late night, and I'm very glad to be with you today. First of all, due to COVID-19, the GNLC member cities and our networks have continuously made exchanges, and we have the Global Citizenship Education Cluster Online International Conference, which is very meaningful, I think. Due to the COVID-19, there are direct and indirect crises affecting economy, society, and environment, and they are the biggest challenges that humanity has been facing since World War II. because of an issue of not dealing well of them, and also inequality are making us even a bigger challenges. And this challenging status, in order for us to overcome this crisis through democracy and citizen education, I would like to share with you our cases with the JNLC member cities. Let me introduce to you our city representing Asia as an icon of rapid growth, Dangjin City, called a microcosm of the ROK. The city has 170,000 populations and is urban-rural complexity. And recently, over the past 5 years, there was an increase of 5,000 people, and it's a very dynamic and young city with the vitality that the average age is the 42. And now you're saying the microcosm of the RK, which is Dangjin. With the opening of the express highways and development of Dangjin Port, we have attracted large companies, including steelmakers and fire coal power plants. As such, we experience rapid economic growth, and among 226 municipalities of Korea City, we ranked first in terms of GDP and second in the employment rate and total birth rate. First, and future population growth projection rate third, and employment rate fourth. And also, however, we had a painful result after this economic abundance. Due to a reckless development centering on economic logic only, natural environment was undermined. And that's why we need to have a deep thought and massive transformation. For the sake of industrial development and economic benefit, Dangjin City needed to resolve social conflict of the past that undermined historical culture. For this, an innovation is required to transform citizenship. Under this context, Dangjin City has come to value democracy and citizenship education more. Responsibility, duty, and carrying out full responsibility as citizens, we have a protected environment, and to ensure sustainable city for all, we needed to realize the importance of engagement. To this end, Dangjin City initiated education on democracy and citizenship with focus. Let me briefly tell you how. In Dangjin, democracy and citizenship education did not wait the citizens. Wherever, we reach out to the citizens to provide continuous support of educations. In a town, the citizenship education, not in Korea but across the world, is being provided to many cities. It's educational service. Democratic citizenship education in Dangjin has a peculiarity that it is based on the historical culture. Dangjin City served as the center of exchanges in East Asia, and Father Kim Dae-gon, recognized by UNESCO, was from the city, and the city is famous for independent movement of Korea. As such, historical democracy and citizenship education are deeply rooted in the city. Such asset of Dangjin City is supporting as democratic and citizenship education to citizens of our time. Democracy and citizenship education are not for adult learners or Koreans. All those who are living in Dangjin can get this citizenship education, including migrant workers and children. The foreign workers get the citizenship education on democracy during day or night and talk about their culture and democracy. Also, young children learn about law-abiding spirit, multicultural, and civic engagement via easy and fun democracy and citizenship education naturally since younger ages. Where the education of the democracy and citizenship will take place. We do have a traditional market that is holding every 5 days, And also, daily necessities and groceries are sold there, where not only residents from inner city but those from remote areas come to this place. So we set up a place for education here, so citizens do not need to visit other places for education. In Dangjin, there is a village, the center of independent movement. Residents here get education on history, democracy, and citizenship. And citizen education take place and everywhere, knowing class. It happens in coffee shops in the region, in art galleries, small bookstores, and residential centers. Wow. Why do we need the education and democracy and citizenship? As I have mentioned earlier, I believe this is important for foreign sovereign to truly become the owner, and for the maturity of self-governing democracy. Such education is becoming a growth engine of key policy of Dangjin. Let me introduce to you. In Dangjin, there are two core policies based on the education on democracy and citizenship. There is sustainable development policy and resident self-governing policy. As you know well, in 2015, UN announced as SDG, environment pollution and social conflicts affects our city. And I believe that the UN's SDG is needed for our city. And also before the Korea, we have first set up this plan. And we have also set up our own plan for the SDG in 2017, and we have also activated the citizens education through the regional governments of the residents. Also, citizenship education has improved the notion on sustainable development, and also it was naturally discussed in citizen schools, and active participation of the local people increased. Second policy is Dangjin self-governing by residents based on democracy. Democracy and citizen education enables restoration of community spirit based on which residents can think and resolve by themselves in such a society. Sovereign are citizens, and with ownership they communicate big and small issues of the regions, creating society together. The self-governing of the residents based on democracy consists of a 14 Unmyeongdong association of residents with 2,050 participants, and achieved results in 65 projects in town. Now, as true owner of Dangjin, based on Dangjin self-governing to realize true principle of power and sovereignty. Evolving Dangjin sustainable development based on democracy and citizenship education based on the 2035 Dangjin SDG basic plan and implementation plan. We completed local SDG model of Korea. Now the value of sustainable development is in our lives. With democracy and citizenship education, Dangjin, as partner of JNLC member cities, will join the journey towards sustainable society. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That's a very useful contribution from Korea. Gamsa, thank you very much. That's great. There is one question in, and there's one more presenter to get involved in this session, Felipe. So Felipe, while you get ready, there's a question from Carlos from George. And this is the question. Dear Professor Torres, one of the good dimensions of advanced capitalism is the virtual abolition of borders. One would expect that information technology would have supported the development of cosmopolitan citizenship, but is this the case? What is your opinion on the role of the media in restricting or even manipulating the idea of a planetarian and cosmopolitan citizenship? It's 5 o'clock in the morning and it's a big question. So, and Philippe, if you don't mind getting ready while Carlos answers this, please. Thanks.
Thank you very much, George, for the question, and Fergal for conveying that. Truth be told, that we are living in a time that the digital culture percolates around us in such a way that invades our own private as well as our own public life. This having been said, keep in mind that the word post-truth was 2 years ago the word that was selected as the most important word in the English dictionary. Post-truth has been one of the main elements of the mass media, because the conspiracy theories are evolving more and more so, because there is an extraordinary ability to manipulate, hackers, name it. Let me put it in this way to be very concise. If you look at education, look also at mass media. Education has two components that opposing itself, and these two components are very clear. On the one hand, education helps to reproduce social inequality. On the other hand, education could help to liberate individuals from oppression. Looking at these two possible scenarios, that's what education is. I call it the duality of education. That is exactly what I will say about mass media. There is a duality of mass media. When on the one hand, you can have all sorts of activities around mass media, creating knowledge, teaching people, getting people together, enhancing solidarity, being able to communicate critical thoughts, even approaching people from distance, creating a community of learning and creating a community of shooting. Remember what is happening in the world right now. There is a growing sense of feeling lonely, of feeling depressed. So there are ways in which this mass media could really contribute to help people in the middle of the COVID situation and the confinement and quarantine. On the other hand, you have all sorts of things conspiring against these very noble goals. So there is not a particular recipe, but I think we have to learn how to live with these conditions and improve upon.
Thank you very much for that answer, Carlos. Could I invite Felipe from São Paulo in here now, please? And I'll send
good afternoon. I'll share my screen. Just a moment here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, but can you hit F5? It's maximized, please.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, first of all, I'd like to begin by thank you for the invitation and opportunity to participate in this online conference. I'm Felipe Costa from Brazil. I'm Portuguese language teacher, but now I'm working in the city's education department as technical education assistant. And I'm also PhD education student at the University of São Paulo, where I research about Portuguese language teaching and curriculum. And here I'm represent the education department of the city of São Paulo. In our municipal schools, we have approximately 2 million students. And I just spoke about this number because in a city with great extensions, unfortunately, we will have some vulnerabilities to face. So here on this first slide, you read an attempt to develop a concept of what vulnerability is for us. We understand that it is necessary to highlight different perspectives on the vulnerability that can occur at the individual level when it is marked by the actions and experience of the individual, but it is also social, mainly when it translates the way the society is structured and how relationships are produced in different groups and contexts. Include that institutional context that derives from the way in which the state responds to the specific needs of of individual or social groups in terms of guaranteeing fundamental human rights and citizenship. And we have also tried to understand in the field of education how the term vulnerability can be understood. So on the second slide, I brought a part of one of our documents in which we clarified, especially for our professionals, what education vulnerability is for us. So although the literature represents few studies that use the term educational vulnerability, in the city of São Paulo, we understand it is as a set of situations that weaken, interfere, or prevent the learning of babies, children, and adolescents due to fail to meet their needs educational. What can cause, for example, students to be denied their rights by those who should provide such rights, just because we consider here in Brazil education as a public, subjective, inalienable, and universal human right. So, from these two understands of the terms vulnerability and educational vulnerability, I made some slides trying to answer these questions. What can make our students vulnerable? And what have we done here in São Paulo to combat educational vulnerability in our city? So here we have some parts of some actions and some vulnerabilities linked to some aspects that we face here with our students. So thinking about physical, methodological, pedagogical, and affective or social aspect, here in São Paulo, we create and maintain NAAPA. In Portuguese, we say Núcleo de Apoio e Acompanhamento para Aprendizagem, and in English means Support and Monitoring Center for Learning, in the 13 regions of the city, which has strength the pedagogical practices necessary to guarantee the learning rights of each student, mobilizing resources and strategies that respect human diversity and consider that the student's subject should be valued regarding gender, ethnicity, culture, disability, religion, among other particularities. So in this NAAPA, each team is composed of 4 professions. We have 1 coordinator, psychologist, and 2 psychopedagogues. This profession help students and teachers to face some vulnerabilities related to physical, methodological, pedagogical, affective, and social aspects. We have another one. Here in Brazil, we say special education service. This special education service is offered to baby, children, and students with disabilities, global development disorders, or high skill or giftedness, considers as target group for this special education. And then we created here in São Paulo some actions and some programs. In Portuguese, the first one is called Centro de Formação e Acompanhamento à Inclusão. In English, Training and Monitor Center for Inclusions. And in each school, we have salas de recursos multifuncionais or multifunctional resource rooms. And for those rooms, we have some teachers. One specialized educational service teacher, or a teacher of support and monitoring of inclusion. We also have a school life assistant, here we say auxiliar de vida escolar, to help students and teachers and other professionals with some students with disabilities. And we have education for deaf. So we also consider some groups, some ethnic groups as vulnerable too. And we have here in São Paulo some indigenous schools or indigenous school education for Native people. And here we have 3 indigenous schools we call as CC in the city of São Paulo. This is the map of our city. And some neighborhoods like Jaraguá and Parelheiros, we have 3 villages, Tecoapiaú, Crucutu, and Tenondeporã. In these schools, indigenous schools, we respect, or there is respect for the specific learning process, for the specific of indigenous school education, and at the same time that it favors the access of educators and children to information, technical, scientific knowledge of non-indigenous society. We also have some vulnerabilities linked to the ethnic and racial aspects, especially with those relate to Afro-Brazilian, African history and culture. And we have a center here, which is called in Portuguese, Núcleo Étnico Racial, or Center for the Education of Ethnic and Racial Relations, which reaches educational establishment in the municipal education of São Paulo through the continuous training of teachers and managers based on education for coexistence and teaching for learning, producing knowledge about Afro-Brazilian, indigenous, immigrant, and Latin American history and culture. We also have some programs and actions where what we address to important action like guarantee access and permanence for every students in the public school. And for this, we have some actions like school uniform. We deliver some kits to our students, and in each kit, current consists of 5 t-shirts, 5 pair of socks, 1 jacket, 1 pant, 1 short, and 1 pair of sneakers. We have also the school feed program here in the city of São Paulo. This is one of the largest in the world. So every day we have 2,300,000 meals served for more than 2 million students here in our city. I couldn't translate this program called Leve Leite, but this is a program which offers powder milk to our students here, especially for our babies from 4 months of age and children up to age of 6. And also we have some school supplies. So all the students, including the babies, receive some school supplies. And we have some kits that vary according to the modality and stage. And the last one, a great program here, which we call as TAG, Free School Transport. It is a program that seeks to guarantee access and permanence in school for children between 4 and 12 years of age enrolled in the municipal education here, and for which it was not possible to make a place available in a school up 2 kilometers from home. It is also serves students with disability or chronic illnesses with medical indication. And the last one, the Early Childhood Scholarship. It is a program which grants a monthly financial, R$200 per children, up to 3 years of age to families with socioeconomic vulnerability living in the city of São Paulo. Here, I try to summarize some programs and actions we did here to face some vulnerabilities we have here in our city. And this is my email, and thank you. That's it about from São Paulo here in Brazil.
Obrigado, Felipe.
De nada.
I think, as you all have heard, there's an extraordinary range of ideas going on, a ferment of activity. So I think we're going to have to, with the time in mind, I think we're going to have to say, let's love the questions that we hold and carry them into the next day. I think time is up now. I do want to say thank you to the Learning City of Larissa and yeonsu-gu, Heraklion, Dangjin, Sao Paulo, and I think we all want to thank Alexis Kokos, Nikolaos Angelikis, Georgis Sisamakis, Irini Papadaki, Freddie Montenero, Professor Carlos Torres, and Mr. Hong-jang Kim, and of course, Felipe Acosta. It's been a very, very rich afternoon. Thank you so much. So I think we can applaud them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Finnegan. We'll start tomorrow at the same time as today. And let me briefly inform you of the program for tomorrow. We'll have sessions covering citizenship education with a link to digital age and culture and local traditions and youth forum. I appreciate all of you who participating today and look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Thank you.